you call me up and you say you have been in an accident, that you were taking a left-hand turn, somebody hit you, and the police told you you were at fault. You did not believe them because you were the one hit. You made a claim with the other insurance company. They said, no, our insured is not liable, therefore you'll have to go through your own insurance. They sent you a denial letter, so you're calling me now. So you don't really understand why you're at fault. So I said, well, tell me a little bit about the accident. And you say, well, I was just at the stoplight. It had turned green. I wanted to make a left-hand turn. So I got out into the intersection. There were cars coming from the opposite direction. I looked, there were no vehicles. Well, did you have a green arrow? Or was it just a green light? Oh no, it wasn't an arrow at all. It was just a green light. I said, okay. And you said the police came. Now they gave you a ticket, is this correct? No, they just put me at fault for the accident, but I didn't get a ticket. I'm like, okay, well, that's good. Tell me about the other vehicle. Okay, tell me when you first saw them. Well, I didn't see them. This is my first clue that the police report is correct. When I ask people about cars coming from the opposite direction in this situation, my first question is, well, when did you see that vehicle? A lot of times they say they didn't see them at all. They just looked up, which means that they were looking down. I just looked up and there he was, and then bam. A lot of times they say he just came out of nowhere. He must have been speeding and on his cell phone and driving recklessly. Well, from what you're saying to me is that you didn't see the vehicle, and then you impeded his right of way, and then he struck you, so you were the proximate cause of the accident. And you say, well, that's not true at all. I say, okay, well, let me ask you this. How many people were in the other vehicle? There were 5. There were 2 adults and 3 children. Okay, so right away, I know that we have a lot of exposure. I want to get in touch with the claimant, get his side of the story, see what we're dealing with as far as injuries, if any, and then take a look at, what's going on with everything. So you say, hey, do you think you can explain this to me? I say, sure, I can explain it to you. This is your vehicle right here, and here's the claimant's vehicle. So as you're saying, you came up to the intersection, there was a red light, the light turned green, you went forward, and this car was right here, and then you did like this, and the vehicle hit you like that. So that would place you at fault. The reason being is because you cannot impede the right-of-way. This vehicle did not have time enough to stop. You impeded the right-of-way by taking left-hand turn in front of him. You're the proximate cause of the accident. So you're saying to me, well, I never saw him. Well, that means that either you were not having proper lookout or you were distracted in some way. So he was coming through. You're just kind of hanging out there. You see him and he's coming up, and then you do this like that. That would still place you at fault. These kind of accidents are very hard to recover from for being at fault for impeding the right-of-way, simply because of the question of when did you first see that vehicle. If he was over here and you took the turn, how did he get right there? So that's something that we take a look at. So when you're telling me you're coming up, there's a green light. Let's say there wasn't any red light. You came up, this vehicle was there, and then boom. So the reason these accidents are so hard to recover from for being at fault is simply because you had the greater duty. He was minding his own business. He was in the proper lane. He was going at a proper speed. And there is no way that he could have caused the accident because he was doing everything he was supposed to. You, on the other hand, had the greater duty to make sure that the way was clear before you. So I called the claimant and I say, so tell me about what happened. And he said, I was just going shopping with my family. I was just going down the road. And then there was a car in front of me and I couldn't stop in time. When I take a look at the police report, the claimant's story is the one that is most supported by the police report. It does say on the police report that you did not see him, that you assume that he was not paying attention or that he was on his cell phone or driving too fast. The police report doesn't cite him for anything. So I agree with the conclusion of the police officer that you are at fault for the accident. And then you say, well, what about my car? My car's totaled. Well, I take a look at your policy and I see that you only have liability coverage. And I say, well, you know, when you get a liability only policy, what you are saying is that you are financially responsible to cover any loss you incur that's your fault, or where there's, you know, where there's an unknown driver. Anything that happens as far as comp or collision, you have said that you are financially able to cover this cost. So you're basically, you have self-insured yourself. Or let's say I take a look at your policy, you have comp conclusion. I said, well, you know, so-and-so, I'm taking a look at your policy. You do have comp conclusion. You know, on your policy, we can do two tows. One from the tow yard where it was towed by the police, and then one to the shop of your choice, where you can work through a network shop. And this is your deductible. I do see that you have rental coverage. Your rental coverage covers $25 per day for 30 days. You say, well, wait a second, that's not going to cover a rental car. And I say, you're right, it's not. But the rental coverage isn't meant to be a complete coverage. So when you get rental coverage, you have had the foresight to look at your finances and place that percentage that you're going to be paying for 30 days, or even after the 30 days, the full rental fee for out of your finances. I call up the claimant. The claimant says, oh, I'm going through my insurance. I said, okay, well, were there any injuries? He said, yes, we're all injured. Well, so as a claim handler, I'm looking at this exposure. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to ask questions. You know, where are the injuries? If your family's injured, where did they go to treatment, ER? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to limit the exposure by finding an opportunity to have a first call settlement. Usually in a case like this, we would go ahead and try to, you know, I would have the authority to do everybody for $15,000. You know, if they went to the ER, if they're thinking about getting treatment, you know, it's a large family. There's lots of exposures. We're dealing with children. So there's a lot going on with this. So I have a talk with you about your policy limits. Your policy limits are only the state minimum. They're very low when it comes to the other person's injuries. And you say, well, what am I going to do? And I'm going to say, well, you know, do you have, what kind of assets do you have? Because the first thing the claimant attorney is going to do in a case like this is do an asset check. You say, well, I have a house, I have this, I have that. I said, well, you know, hopefully there's not a next time, but you should really consider a PLUP if you have a lot of assets that you need to protect. You know, unfortunately with accidents, things go very badly, very quickly. So one of the things, you know, I always recommend is to take a look at your policy limits, try to get as much, the highest limit you can, and also to try to get a low deductible, look into the umbrella policies, whatever suits your finances. Of course, it's always based on, a licensed agent giving recommendations. So in this accident, this is going to be very hard to find any comparable negligence. It's also going to be very hard to find, even in Virginia where 1% bars, it's going to be very hard to find that 1%. As far as all the information that I'm getting is that the claimant was just, he had a green light, he was going through the intersection, you had a green light, you turned left and you impeded his right of way. And furthermore, you stated to me that you didn't even see him. So there's a lot going on with this. So I hope that this explains why you're at fault for when you make a left-hand turn and somebody strikes you.